I'm so delighted to be here to talk about this topic because it's something that's on the minds of so many of our medical practice consulting clients, and so many medical practice managers and physicians are considering either outsourcing their medical billing for the first time or switching to a different provider. And so I feel like this topic is really timely. And it's also just such an important decision for all of your practices. You know, if you choose the right medical billing partner, it can make all the difference for your practice in terms of your profitability and in terms of the efficiency of your workflow. But it's a very, very important decision. It's really important to choose the right partner. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And before I get into the 8 questions I want you to consider asking and putting to the candidates for your medical billing business, I wanted to just share a little bit of housekeeping. We're trying a different sort of format with this subject than you might have experienced with other midday webinars where usually it's an hour. We're offering a quick format today. We're just going to be speaking for about a half an hour. So if you are to the east and you're doing this during your lunch break, you'll still have time for grabbing a sandwich afterwards. And what we've done is we've divided the subject of choosing and managing a medical billing service up into 2 parts. So today we're going to talk about choosing. In about 3 weeks, on the 16th, we're going to have a follow-up presentation on working with the billing service that you've chosen. So for today, we're going to focus on 8 questions I think you should consider as you begin interviewing and screening and evaluating possible medical billing services for your practice. And I just want to say that, 8 questions is never going to be exhaustive in terms of evaluating your options. But what I want to do is give you a good start and give you some things to think about. And if you look at these 8 key areas, you're going to start to understand what are some of the biggest things I have to be concerned about when making this really important decision. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the first question I want to discuss is, what technology platforms do you work with? And you know what, I have to actually mention these questions are in sort of a random order. They're not ranked. However, this first one is probably one of the most important things you can ask about, if not the most important thing you can ask about. And here's why. So many of the practices that we work with are still working on older practice management systems that are not giving them the kind of daily data that they need to really manage their practices well. And if you've been putting up with a system where it's really hard to run reports, you have to create all of your own reports, or you just can't get access on a regular basis to the information you need to know how your practice is doing, here's your opportunity to use this decision in choosing a new billing service as a way to also upgrade your practice management system. And there are many more excellent options now than ever before. And this is really your chance to get a big upgrade if you've been thinking about that in tandem with actually making this big outsourcing decision. So a really key thing to understand is what kind of reporting is going to be available. Will you be able to log in and get access to this critical data about your practice at will and not have to wait to get, only a report once a month or only certain kinds of reports or invest in a lot of development time? This is an opportunity to leave all that behind and actually get access to great reporting. Also, you may be able to tap into lots of different third-party software tools, and sometimes those will be built in or integrated with the practice management system that your billing service will offer. In other cases, you're just going to be able to tap into the knowledge that that billing service has about what else is out there to help you, especially on the patient collection side. So technology is just a really important thing to quiz the candidates that you're looking at for an outsourced billing solution on. Next slide, please. So if you use something like Fitbit, or if you have Google Analytics, on your website, you're already familiar with this idea of a dashboard. And, once you get used to this idea of logging in and seeing all kinds of great data about something that's important to you, you don't want to go back, right? I mean, and the idea here is that by choosing your medical billing partner, partly based on the kind of technology they can offer you, you'll be able to have this same kind of immediate access to really important key performance indicators right at your fingertips just by making the right choice of partner. Next slide, please. So the second question I'd like you to pose to your medical billing service candidates is, how do you grade yourselves? And by that I mean, how does a billing service know that it's doing a good job on behalf of its practice clients? What metrics do they consider important? And what kind of reports are they going to be providing to you? I mentioned in the last slide that it's really important for you to be able to access all the data that you need at will. But, most billing services are going to have some kind of reporting that they're going to offer to you, and that's going to give you an indication of what they believe the most important metrics are. And you want to make sure that that lines up with what's important to you. For example, if you've had an ongoing problem with your receivables expanding, which is, of course, an affliction facing many practices these days, you want to make sure that that's something that the billing service is really focused on as well. The other thing is that, in addition to how they grade themselves, how they evaluate their own performance, of course you want to make sure that they're able to provide you with some references, ideally within your own specialty, but at the very least some solid references that are willing to talk to you and you share their experiences working with the service. Next slide, please. So the next question, tell me about your team. So one of the best things that you can gain by outsourcing your medical billing is the ability to access a deeper team with broader expertise than you would likely be able to bring into your own practice on a full-time basis, especially if your practice is small and you might have only enough volume for one or two actual full-time billers. You're not likely to be able to bring in, for example, a certified coder. So, in many cases, the billing service may have some of that specialized expertise on their team. And although that person won't be working full-time on your business, they'll be available to help when problems come up. So this is a really important advantage that a billing service can bring to you. But you want to understand, who is on the team and what are the special credentials that they may bring. And also, do they have expertise in your specialty? For some specialties, this can be really important. Certain types of specialties have much more challenging billing issues than other types of specialties. And so if that describes your practice, you may want to ask, do you have experience with this? And if you don't, how would your team go about getting educated so that you could really effectively bill on behalf of my practice? The other thing is that you want to find out how committed the service is to making sure their team pursues ongoing training. Are they encouraged, for example, to go for certifications like the CPC credential? And do they take part in industry groups like the HBMA and other groups that that offer ongoing training and professional networking for people in the medical billing industry? Lastly, you also want to know that the team has been thoroughly screened. Medical identity theft is a fast-growing crime. It's considered one of the fastest-growing white-collar crimes, and so you really need to understand that the team that's working on your billing has been properly screened before being brought on board to the billing services team. Next slide, please. So question 4, what's required of my team? Now, I have to tell you, look at that first bullet. If a billing source responds nothing, we take care of everything, that's actually not the answer that you want to hear, because here's the thing. In today's high deductible plan environment, patients are responsible for so much more of the cost of their care than ever before. And so it's absolutely crucial that some of that collecting and some of that conversation is happening inside the practice. It really has to start with even with your scheduling process, and then of course collecting at the front desk. So understanding how your team is going to work with the billing service team is really, really important. It's not going to be possible for you to collect all the money that your practice is due unless the billing service and your own team are working really well together. The other, some other examples of ways in which teamwork is going to be essential include when you're looking into converting. You know, the conversion process can be a little bit tricky, and you need to understand who's going to be handling what pieces and whether some of the billing has to still continue on a prior system and who's going to be responsible for what. So make sure you understand how all that works. And then another big thing is all the mail that you receive from your payers. You know, many times when you set up with a billing service, that mail starts going to them instead of to your practice. And you need to make sure that you're aware of what's being received and what decisions are being made. We worked with a practice recently that was working with an excellent billing service, but the billing service was perhaps just being a little bit too helpful, and they had received some mail about a program from the CMS, and they just assumed that the practice would not want to participate in it. And we found out about the program, and it turned out actually it was something that the practice really did want to get involved in. So sometimes the billing services may not have all the information that's needed to decide what to do about some of the communications that are coming in from your payers. Make sure that there's a good understanding about how you're going to work together on those things. Next slide. So how do you work with our patients? That's question 5. And you know what? This is such a crucial question because, of course, being patient-centered and offering top quality service is more important than ever before. Patients are much more sensitive about the service that they receive, and of course there are many more opportunities for them to give feedback, including giving feedback online, you know, about their experiences with your practice. So you have to keep in mind that whomever a patient speaks with about their business with the practice, to that patient, that person is your practice. And so you have to understand how the billing service is actually going to work with your patients. So, you know, in some cases you may find that it's preferable to have questions come into someone who's actually inside the practice. Maybe you're comfortable with having questions go to the service as long as someone inside the practice is checking in and making sure that things are going smoothly and the billing service has all the information they need to give good information back to patients. The bottom line is you just need to know how the billing service can make sure that patients are getting the same excellent service that they would get if they were talking to someone from your practice, and that your team is giving the service all the support it needs to do that. Another really important aspect of working with patients is statement policies. You know, it used to be the case that statements were sent out routinely once a month, and that used to be okay, but, you know, it's really no longer adequate because, as I said earlier, with so many patients on high deductible plans, it's much more likely that patients are actually going to be billed for a balance. And what that means is that if you're only sending out statements once a month, you're really lengthening the amount of time between when the patient actually comes in the practice and when they receive their bill. Especially if, for example, the EOB comes in and you've just done a statement batch, well, that means that patient's bill that you just got the EOB for will not get sent out for another 4 weeks. So it may be 8 weeks before the patient actually sees a statement pertaining to that visit that they had or that procedure that they had. And that just makes it much more likely that the patient will be confused and maybe even consider the bill invalid. So hopefully any billing service that you are talking with will be able to give you good feedback on this subject. It's much preferable if statements are actually sent out on a weekly basis rather than a monthly basis. And you also want to know what kind of dunning messages might be included because, again, that really reflects on your practice. And in many cases, you are able to actually customize those, so you want to ask about that. You want to know if the billing service has the ability to set your patients up on a payment portal, and also, of course, if they have electronic statements. This can make a dramatic difference in how quickly you are paid by patients. They're much more likely to pay when they can do it on their time. They have to pay by a credit card. It's much more convenient if they can just log in and do it whenever and not have to do it during business hours with a phone call. So you ask about that. And then finally, does the technology that the billing service uses allow them to set up payment plans, or do they have a recommendation for a solution that you can use inside the practice to set patients up on a payment plan if they're looking at a larger procedure or something like maternity that can be paid off over 6 months if they're on a deductible plan and they're going to actually be responsible for the entire cost. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. So next question, how do you deal with tough and problem accounts? This is so important, and you want to make sure that you get a really satisfactory answer about this, because the #1 complaint that we see with our clients when they have a billing service and they're thinking about switching is that they don't believe that the service that they're working with is fighting hard enough for their money. So make sure you understand what's going to happen when problems come up. If there are denials, is there someone there who's going to be working those? Do they know how to, again, involve your team as needed if there are documentation issues, or if, for example, there are recurring problems with certain coding errors? What's going to be the process for dealing with that and working with your practice to make sure that these things are corrected so that they don't slowly siphon away your revenue? Also, on the collections front, you need to have a clear policy for sending patient accounts to collection. For example, one important issue, of course, to work out is who's going to be in charge of choosing the collection agency that you're going to be using. Do they have an agency that they use and they recommend, or will that be up to you? And then, of course, you want to make sure that you're comfortable with the policy for sending patients out to collections after a certain number of statements have been sent, and that process is implemented in a very consistent fashion and, of course, compliant with all your federal, state, and local laws. Next slide, please. So next question, who will manage our account? You know what, this is so important. With all of these things we've talked about, problems, teamwork, all the things that require your practice to work together with your medical billing service, it's really important that you know who you're going to call. So when something goes wrong, is there somebody there who's dedicated to your account? That's really the ideal. You really want to know that there's one person who's going to be a steady contact for you, even if multiple different managers are actually working on the day-to-day execution of your billing. Is there an account manager that you can call to understand what's coming down the pipe with new technology, solve problems that come up with your practice, and just have the ability to raise any issues that come up? You also want to know, will that person be responsible for helping you as you go through your conversion process? What is the actual extent of that person's role? Understand what that person is going to be able to do for you, and then what you're going to have to work out on your own. Next slide, please. Last question, what is in your contract? So this is so important. So many times we see practices going through a process of working with any kind of outside vendor and then getting to the point where they receive a contract and they believe that everything's been covered, so they don't actually give the contract a thorough review. But this can be such a mistake, especially with something that's so important like choosing an outsource partner for your revenue cycle. So I think it's always a good idea to ask right up front for a copy of the boilerplate agreement. And that's just a standard agreement that a billing service will use with all of its clients. And some things you want to make sure you understand. What are the rules about the terms about termination? What if you're unhappy, or what if your practice merges with another practice and you need to actually switch off the billing service? How much notice do you need to give? What's the process for terminating? Your data ownership. Of course, you want to make sure that it's very clear that you own all of your data. What kind of indemnification is included, and what kind of indemnification do they expect from you? You really hope to see that there's some indemnification of your practice if errors on the part of the billing service actually harm a patient or harm your practice. And then, of course, you want to understand what is the basis for pricing the service. Many times billing service pricing is quoted as a percentage, but you need to understand, is that percentage of the revenue collected, or is it percentage of your actual billing? That makes a huge difference. And so, if you look at the pricing basis and the terms of the contract with respect to pricing, you can then go and do some calculations to understand exactly what your cost is likely to be. Now, two final thoughts on this issue of the contract. Contracts usually contain business elements and they contain legal elements, or things that are, legalese, if you will, that lay people don't necessarily understand all the implications of. Some contracts are more simple than others. Some are relatively easy for a business person to understand. Other times, there's legal language in there that you may not feel totally comfortable with. I always encourage people to get business elements reviewed by a business expert. There are people who are, experts in billing services and in medical billing that can help you on the business side of the agreement. And then if you have any doubts at all about the legal elements, it's always worthwhile to invest just a little bit in having a lawyer review the document for you. And with that, I will turn it back over to Cheryl, our host, and she'll tell us a little bit about our sponsor.
Thank you, Laurie. So we're just going to take a few minutes to talk to you about Care360's newest solution, and then we'll go through all the questions that you guys are sending in. Just as a reminder, you can send those questions in using the Q&A button or a Q&A window, depending on what you see right now. On the right-hand side of your screen, there should be a Q&A window. You may have to click it to open it up and just type in your question, and when you send it in to everybody. That way we can all take a look at it and hopefully get your question addressed. So just to talk to you really quickly about Care360. Care360 offers a holistic solution to managing your practice. We have started our solution with Care360 Labs and Meds, which was designed to help practices place lab orders and receive results. E-prescribing was added to allow our physicians to write and manage prescriptions, but our customers were still asking for a more robust solution. So we introduced Care360 EHR in 2010, followed by our practice management solution in 2012. And knowing that efficiency and profitability are really top of mind for our physicians, this spring we introduced our latest offering, which is revenue cycle management. Our Care360 revenue cycle management is our billing service. We provide you with a team of billing experts to help you maximize collections and revenue by doing the work for you. This allows you to focus on your patients. When you get started with Care360 revenue cycle management, you are assigned a dedicated account manager to handle all of your needs from billing claims to denial management. Given the ever-changing healthcare landscape, our certified coders and experienced billers offer vast knowledge in various specialties and with insurance payers. You always know where you stand with our billing dashboard and comprehensive reporting. Denials are worked thoroughly and continuously until they are resolved. And patient statements are sent out weekly, and a dedicated phone number is provided for billing questions. Our solution is fully compliant with HIPAA, OIG, and ICD-10 regulations. And best of all, Care360 scheduling, practice management, and electronic health records are included in your fee, which is just a percentage of your collections. Through the comprehensive dashboards and our revenue cycle performance screen, you can monitor how your billing team is doing and be confident they're doing everything they can for you. And as I mentioned, our Care360 practice management is ICD-10 ready. We offer an ICD-10 success dashboard that will help your practice prepare for the transition, while your ICD-trained biller will help ensure claim accuracy and follow claims from end to end to be certain you get paid after October 1st. When you invest in Quest, you are investing in a trusted, experienced partner that will excel at meeting your needs. You can be confident in knowing that you're partnering with a financially stable partner. You will connect to a larger healthcare community by joining our network that already touches the lives of so many. We'll help you deploy our advanced cloud-based solutions in an efficient manner to support your evolving needs. And you're provided with a team of dedicated professionals who are ready to embrace and support the needs of your practice and people with 24/7 support. Overall, you gain access to an extensive network that truly helps turn data into insight and insight into action. So now I'd like to open it up for questions. As I've kind of directed, you can use the Q&A window to send those in. And if we don't have time, we'll actually capture all these questions and we can get back to you later and share the answers. If you had asked, we'll send you an email right back. So, first question for Laurie. What do you think is the most challenging thing that customers will expect when they move to a billing service?
Would
you like me to repeat that?
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I was having a little trouble unmuting myself. So, okay, so actually, could you repeat? The question is, what would be the most challenging thing when you're actually in the process of moving? Is that the question?
Yes. What's the most challenging thing that you can expect when moving to a billing service? So if you're doing it all in-house now, you know, what's the worst, not worst, what's the most challenging thing somebody will have to deal with?
Well, I definitely think that you need to invest some time into figuring out how your workflow is going to change and how you're going to work together with the service. And one thing that we see is that, you know, there are excellent people working in billing services, and they really want to do everything that they can to help. But sometimes, you know, they may try to take all of your problems away, and it's just not possible. So you need to make sure that it's clear how you're going to work together and how they can really be an extension of your practice, and also how, you know, you're going to have to do things in a slightly different way to make sure that all the information that the billing service needs is getting to them in a timely fashion. So I think that's probably the most challenging but most important bit of groundwork that you have to do, and if you do it right, it's going to make things so much easier from there forward.
Thank you. Another question, is there any specific things offices should try to ask when trying to assess ICD-10 readiness?
That's a really good question. So I will say that many of the billing services we work with have been focusing on ICD-10 for so many years now because there have been so many false starts. I think that it's quite likely that some groundwork has been done, but I would ask certain things. For example, do they know how well prepared their technology vendor is? Do they know if any testing has been done? And have they gotten any feedback from any of the payers that you work with about their readiness? Those are some of the things I think that I would quiz them on a bit.
Okay. I do see we're kind of getting to our time limit here, so I'm just going to kind of share this slide with you. If anybody wants any more questions, if anybody wants more information, here's all the links for Laurie, her company website, and how to reach out to her. Also the links to learn more about Care 360. I'll continue to see if there's any more questions coming in, and we'll answer those, but I wanted to share this information with everybody. We do have another webinar coming up next month, which is part 2 of what we're just going through today. That's going to talk about best practices in managing the relationship with your medical billing service. I did put a little Google link here, but we will also make sure we send that link if people want to register in the post-session email that you'll get tomorrow that has the recording link in it. So don't worry if you don't have a chance to write this down.